Do that.
Okay. Mike Limberios, how are you today?
Pretty good, Matt.
Good to see you. You've been on a whirlwind travel schedule in the last week.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy.
Mike and his wife Shannon Limberios were recently in California. I think you flew to California on Tuesday
Yeah.
at the request of Phil McGraw, Dr. Phil.
Yes.
And you actually taped a program of the Dr. Phil, or a segment of the Dr. Phil program.
Yes, we did, Matt.
About the March 2nd, 2012 killing of your son.
Yep.
And a lot happened.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because there was two of the witnesses had flown down the week before, and they were also on the show.
Two of the witnesses being Brittany Bowers and Will Lewis.
Yes.
And it was the first time we've named them in our news coverage was Friday. And we did that because they actually went to California to be on the Dr. Phil program.
Yep.
We could have named them earlier, certainly in our news coverage, because they were witnesses to whatever happened on March 2nd. Dr. Phil interviewed all of you? Was it a program setting?
Yes. Yeah. There was an audience. It was filmed. Me and my wife were on stage, and Brittany and Will sat directly across from us. Dr. Phil was in the center there.
And Dr. Cyril Wecht was...
Yes.
Was he on the program live?
No, not live. He was satellited in.
Satellited in,
Yep.
Okay. And so there was a discussion. Dr. Phil was interviewing all four of you at the same time, plus Dr. Wecht?
Yes.
You were having a conversation?
Yes.
Typical Dr. Phil program?
Yes. Yep.
And but they didn't. They initially the producers of the Dr. Phil program came to Castalia on Saturday.
Yes.
What time did they get to your home?
It was like 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 a.m. and they didn't leave until after 1 a.m.
Yeah, it was like 1:30 before they were packed up. They come in and took over the whole place.
And the Register on Saturday and Sunday has some additional coverage about interviewing you and your wife and several other people who were engaged in this program on Saturday and Sunday. So I have some familiarity with what you went through. We've talked before about the experience of being in California. Did you have difficulty sitting across from Brittany? You've known Brittany a long time.
Yeah, well, as long as Jake and Kaylee have been together.
Kaylee was Jacob's girlfriend.
Yes.
And the mother of his daughter, Ella.
Right.
And Ella is 4 years old.
Yeah, soon to be 5 here.
And she's soon to be 5?
Yeah.
And Kaylee is fighting with the family for the truth.
Right.
Which has been an 18-month struggle.
Almost 19.
Almost 19 months? I thought it was almost 18 months. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah.
Who would think that
Yeah.
something like this would take this long?
Yeah.
But the Attorney General's office has had this investigation since about June, the beginning of June.
Yep.
And now Dr. Phil McGraw, the Dr. Phil program, has weighed in. And Dr. Phil is a forensic psychologist.
Correct.
So he's very familiar with crime scene and witness statements, and that was his business before he became a talk show host. He's a trained psychologist. And do you watch Dr. Phil?
I've seen Dr. Phil a few times. I've watched Sarah Wecht on Dr. Phil before.
Okay. Cyril Wecht is the forensic pathologist who conducted an autopsy in September
Yes.
Of Jacob's body. Have they told you when the program's going to air?
They said that it could be like November, but last word I heard, they were trying to push this through because...
Earlier.
Yes.
Interesting. And because Mike DeWine's office, the prosecutors in his office, the assistant attorney generals, Marianne Hemmeter, Matt Donahue,
Bill Skank.
Bill Skank, who DeWine described as his top echelon prosecutors in his office, have been investigating this for 4 months. Have they led you to believe where they're going, what they're in your conversations with them?
No, they don't really give us a whole lot, Matt. It's an active investigation, and
You've been hearing that a long time.
I've heard it. How many investigations now, Matt?
I don't know how many investigations.
This is number 4.
And it was originally former Sandusky County Deputy Bill Kaiser, I believe.
Before that, it was Captain Maggot.
Yes, but it was Bill Kaiser who sought the assistance of the BCI crime lab for the original polygraph tests of Brittany and Will.
Yes.
And those results from those tests came back as, in all likelihood, they were being truthful in their statements that Jacob shot himself.
Correct. I think the word was they found him to be telling the substantial truth.
Right. And in the process of battling Sandusky County officials over 15 months, I believe, those test results were sent by your attorney to a group, I believe, of polygraphists.
Yes.
Who are lie detector experts.
Yes.
Experts in its polygraphy is the science of lie detectoring. And that response from them was that the methodology used by BCI was inaccurate.
Yes.
Was not appropriate, did not meet standards.
I was told that they stopped using that system back in the 50s.
Nobody told BCI. The letter didn't get there, perhaps. But then Dr. Phil had his own polygraphist.
Yes.
Will and Brittany agreed to another lie detector test.
Yes.
And so that's the big mystery as to how those came out. Now, Mr. McCookie, your attorney, has said that he's confident that the new lie detector test will show that the ones provided by BCI were not accurate.
Yes.
So, what do you think happens next?
I'm going to be talking with Marianne Hemmeter and Mike DeWine's office this afternoon. I think we're going to try to figure out what's going on from this point forward.
Because they had indicated to you, or Mike, or they indicated to Dan McCookie, your attorney, that they expected to have some substantial information to report by the end of this month.
Yeah.
Particularly from Dr. Michael Bodden,
Yes.
The former New York pathologist, who is reviewing the autopsy reports.
Yes, and tissue samples and witness statements.
And witness statements. And Mike DeWine told I believe it was a Toledo news broadcaster, that Dr. Bodden was going to carefully examine everything and offer his opinion as to what happened. And Bodden has had that information at least a month or more at this point.
Yeah.
And you were anticipating by the end of this month, and that's right on top of us.
Yeah.
So you're still feeling a little bit of a whirlwind from going to California.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
And you mentioned that you couldn't even count the number of people that were in your home on Saturday. Not that there were dozens, but there were so many people and so many requests. And I think one of the things you said is they move faster.
Yes.
And they talk faster. And they want answers quicker.
10 minutes. I could give you 10 minutes, and they want to know.
And while they were here, you actually you were in the home for 8-10 hours with the producers.
Yes.
And the producers were engaged on the phone with other producers back in California.
Yes.
And a lot of what you were being asked was being dictated from California.
Yes.
And then, after the interviews, late on Saturday, you traveled some. Is that right? You went to the York Township home where Jacob was killed.
Yes.
And what was that like? What were they asking at that point?
They were getting a general idea of the layout of the house, and I didn't really know what all they...
Did they go into the house?
Yes, we did. We went into the house. That's the first time I've been into the house since the AG's office took over the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
First time I noticed that they cut the drywall out around the bullet entrance hole, took the drywall. There's these little stickers that have measurements on them. You can see actually on the beam where the bullet grazed the beam.
And they marked that? That marking was still there?
Yeah, that's all still there.
And do you think that occurred when Sandusky County Sheriff's deputies retrieved the bullet, which was 8-9 months later? Is that when the markings occurred, or was it the AG's office?
These are from the AG's office. I was there when the bullet was retrieved, Matt.
That's right.
I helped in that process. I was there when they did their rod test, and then I was there
It's a rod test.
It's the trajectory, I guess you would call it, down into the room with Sean O'Connell and Zach Zender. I was there for that. I was then there again when our investigators, M&M, they did a laser beam test. It's kind of the same thing, probably a little more accurate.
Mm-hmm. So they were able to get some physical, or they might have been able to get some physical evidence from the home months later, because initially Sandusky County Sheriff's deputies walked away without retrieving the bullet.
Yes.
And without securing the crime scene.
Correct.
In a way that met standard practice, basic 101, as your attorney Dan McGookie would say.
During the first investigation with Captain Michael Maggot, he said that they were going to go out and retrieve the bullet. After that, Overmeyer shut the investigation down. Sheriff
Kyle Overmeyer.
Yes, and then me and Dan were talking. We've been doing this, and this is our own investigation. If they're not going to do it, we told them, then we're going to hire someone to go out and retrieve that bullet. That's when they jumped on and said, no.
And was there ever any explanation as why they weren't interested in retrieving the bullet or measuring the directions, or was there ever any investigation about that?
Any conversation about that? No. I have my own thoughts and theories, but...
Do you want to share those? And it's okay if you don't.
No. I have nothing to hide. I haven't through this whole thing. I've tried to put it out there, everything that I get, and I believe that the people have a right to know. Then they can come to their own conclusion. I think with the roadblocks and everything that we've gone through with the county, and I'm talking judges, special prosecutors,
Judge Dewey and Judge Anstead.
Yeah, just the entire process.
Sandusky County Prosecutor Thomas Steerwalt.
Yep.
His investigator Bill Kaiser. Sandusky County Sheriff Kyle Overmeyer. His investigator Sean O'Connell. They weren't providing answers to your questions.
I believe the whole thing was geared to maintain
the original.
Yes.
The original decision, which was made within 3 hours
yeah.
after Jacob was killed, that he committed suicide. But it might have been accidental.
Yes.
And effectively, that is what you and your family have sought to define. How did our son die?
Right. To me, Matt, it's not like they have to do DNA and try to find out who was there at the house. They know who was there. it's not as hard as I think that they're portraying it out to be. Just my opinion. I mean, it's.
But now DeWine took over the case in June.
Yes.
After a judge ruled that Sandusky County Special Prosecutor Dean Henry had a conflict of interest, which your attorney had pointed out months earlier, that you can't be both the criminal prosecutor looking for truth and the defense counsel for the county against the Limberios family, that those are competing roles. But Mr. Henry didn't see it that way, but finally a judge did.
Yes.
And removed Sandusky County officials from the investigation completely.
Yes.
Their considerations on this are no longer part of what is occurring, because now it's in DeWine's hands.
Correct.
And you're going to have a conversation with his investigative team today.
Yes, this afternoon.
So how do you feel? The producers of the Dr. Phil show haven't told you when the program will air, or even what the title of the program might be. Oftentimes they title their programs.
It is going to be a 2-part. They told me.
Oh.
Yeah, there was 2 different audiences that come in there.
Okay.
They were, when we left California, some of the crew, some of the staff they were on overtime. They don't normally stay. I know that the Dr. Phil show won't be taping for the next couple days, so this is their time off. This was their weekend. So I mean, we were done. We got in the car that they provided. They took us to LAX, and everybody went on their way. The producer did tell me that she called me at the airport all that evening when we were waiting for our flight out, that she's going to touch base with me again here, going to give us a couple days and then I'll get more information by then.
And you'll let us know once you have information about an air date. We've also requested of the producers information about an air date. We've also requested Dr. Phil to be a guest on Between the Lines. So if you have any influence with Dr. Phil, now that you two know each other, at least from this conversation, we'd like to have Dr. Phil on the Between the Lines program. We've invited him to be on this program. We've also invited a producer to be on the program so that they might tell us more about the intention of their program. I know that Sandusky County Sheriff Kyle Overmeyer was contacted by the producers of Dr. Phil, and he declined to participate in any conversation or any activity with regard to the Dr. Phil show, citing the ongoing investigation.
Has nothing to do with the investigation anymore.
And that was a familiar refrain from Sheriff Overmeyer, because he had cited the ongoing investigation for the 15 months as being the reason he wouldn't respond to questions, even though he cut the investigation off after about 6 weeks and then reopened it and stopped and started. What do you hope happens next?
I hope the AG's office doesn't take another month. Every month is like 6 months to me, my family, and the friends, and it's I want them to do a thorough investigation. I hope they're close to concluding.
At one point, while this was still in the hands of local law enforcement officials, you told me that the worst days were Fridays at 5.
Yeah.
And why was that?
Because they work normal hours, I guess. Now, I have to say this, Matt. Mike DeWine himself has called on the weekend.
Right.
I mean, he didn't have a secretary call. I mean, I realize his staff and everybody, but I believe that they're working with us.
Right.
So.
And I think that's important to point out, that Mike DeWine, Attorney General Mike DeWine, former senator from Ohio, who became Attorney General a couple years ago, after being elected, defeating Richard Cordray, the incumbent. He has been accessible.
Yes. If
He either picks up the phone
Yep.
when you call him, or he calls you back shortly thereafter.
Yes, not his secretary, not one of the staff members, him personally. He will do that.
And that's been our experience too, as reporters, that he has been accessible. Getting information from the investigative team has been more difficult, and I understand the dynamics of an investigation. But it is Mary Ann Hemmeter, Matt Donahue, and Bill Skank who are leading the investigation, and they would have the information that we're seeking. So we're working on those two stories for Saturday. Saturday's story in the Sandusky Register is about, I think the headline is going to be DeWine, no, it's Dr. Phil and DeWine, talk show hosts could have impact on state's investigation. So it looks at what the possible impact might be. And Sunday's story by reporter Alyssa Whitman tells more about the experience of this experience of the past week or 10 days in Sunday's Register. And then we're going to keep readers updated about when the program will air. And whatever information we get, we'll keep readers updated whether Dr. Phil agrees to be on Between the Lines. I'm hopeful he will.
I went to California for him. He can help us with in our little town here. So
That's right. That's right. You went to California for him. So, but, all in all, your experience of the producers, and we've talked a couple times since Wednesday, is that they were thorough, that they were like asking lots of questions.
the questions, documents, not just asking. They wanted proof before they wanted actual
Hard copy
Yes.
documents that you had
before they
gathered.
would report on anything.
And the Justice for Jake group,
Yep.
which is made up of family and friends,
Yep.
primarily friends and supporters of,
Yes.
of the family, has posted multiple pieces of documentation, recordings from detective interviews, a lot of disturbing information, a lot of information that could be consumed as disturbing. Jason, are there any questions in the interactive chat room?
Nope.
Okay. Well, Mike, thank you for being on the program and updating our viewers, and I'm sure we'll talk again when it gets closer. Is there anything else that you want to say?
I just thank you guys for helping keep this thing. We probably wouldn't have got national attention if it wasn't for the Sandusky Register keeping this story alive. This would have probably been buried a long time ago. I think that's what the county was expecting.
I think it seemed that they did not want to go forward, and you and your family and the supporters of Justice for Jake have said that often.
Yep.
And I've always replied that we're just reflecting you. We're just telling a story, and it's your family and your friends that have shown the courage.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for being on the program, Mike, and we'll talk to you again soon. Jason, we're going to take a break and then come back with